what's going on, guys? It's Hydro. Welcome back to another video. So in this video, guys, we're actually going to be showing you how I make my 3D Fortnite thumbnails in Blender. Now, on the channel recently, I've been uploading Call of Duty, so you're probably a little bit confused on why I'm doing this now all of a sudden. Reason being is because if you guys didn't know, I actually uploaded a previous tutorial on how to make my 3D thumbnails, but that was in SFM, and I'm long gone with SFM at this point. I finally got my new PC like in April, I think, and I got, an RTX 2080 and an i7, and my old PC couldn't handle Blender for anything. So I've been using Blender for quite a while now, and I haven't made a tutorial on it yet. And obviously you guys seem to like the other SFM tutorial because it has like 11k views, I think, like that at this point in time, and it has like a 98% like to dislike ratio. So people really enjoyed that. I'm sure a lot of you watching this right now are actually from that video. So here's an updated way on how I make my thumbnails. As far as who I am and how long I've been doing 3D design for, I've been doing 3D design since about January is when I first started using SFM and stuff like that. That's actually the first time I actually got introduced to the whole thing. And then I used SFM throughout like April, and like I said, I finally got my new PC, so I transitioned to Blender. Sadly, this will be the last design video on this channel. If you guys want to see where I'm going to be doing future design projects, tips and tricks, and a lot more, make sure that you guys go subscribe to my second channel called Hydro 2.0. Recently, I've been posting speed arts on there, not only Fortnite, but also Call of Duty, and then that's where I also will be live streaming, just making thumbnails in progress. So if you guys want to be, updated on that channel, make sure you guys go hit the sub button over there. And yeah, that would be greatly appreciated. If you guys are interested in working with me on any sort of projects in the future, make sure that you guys go hit me up on Twitter. As far as who I've worked with in the past, I've worked with people like Exility, Ezzy, I Run You, Higsy, and also Doom Danny. So those are a few of the people that I've worked with as of recently. And yeah, without further ado, let's actually get right into the tutorial. So first off, obviously you're gonna have to download Blender if you don't have it already. Basically, just go to blender.org/download, and then what a lot of people do is they just click on download Blender, but that's actually gonna take you to the old one, which is Blender 2.79. So if you want the most updated and greatest one, make sure that you guys click on try Blender 2.8 beta. Now, it might be a little bit confusing from here. What a lot of people like to do is they just like to go to File, Open, and then import their models from here. But that 99% of the time will actually get Blender to crash. I'm not too sure why, it just does. So to do it the correct way, highlight over everything right here and then just click delete on your keyboard so there's nothing in the scene. And then to do it the correct way, just go back to File, go to Append, and then click on whatever model you want. So let's just do the bullseye, for example, and then you would want to go to Object, just highlight over these two, and then click Append from Library. Now, for you guys that don't actually have any models imported, I'll leave a link down in the description to a few Google Drives where these models, you can actually find them at. And don't worry, these models are free. I got them basically just off design discords like Lurks, Hefix, and stuff like that. So it's not like I paid for these models and I'm just like giving them out for free. These are all free on discords where basically just people share their Google Drives from. So I'll leave those down in the description for a few of them in case you guys are looking for models. If you guys want to learn how to port your own models, though, I'll leave Hefix's video down in the description where he actually shows how to import models yourself from the Fortnite game files. So you can do either or. Now, there's a few things that you're going to want to do when you first get into Blender. First thing that you're going to want to do is to make sure that you're actually on the look dev mode instead of this mode. Make sure that you're on the look dev mode up in the top right. And basically, that'll actually load up your textures. So if your character is white, don't worry about it. All you have to do is go into look dev mode. It's that simple. Now, there's a few things to start off, so it makes it a lot easier throughout the whole process. Head over to this left side and actually click on the render tab, and then make sure that you actually change your render engine to cycles, which will basically just bring out the best quality. And then change your device to GPU compute, or you can leave it on CPU. I just like GPU compute because me personally, I don't like to use up all my CPU percentage, or else it would probably explode if I'm being honest with you. But I just like to use my GPU in that sense. And then another thing that you're probably going to want to do is go to Film and then click on Transparency. Now basically what that's going to do is that when you actually render out your whole model, there's not going to be any background like there is with SFM where you have to cut it out in Photoshop. Literally, it's just going to be transparent, so it's going to be a PNG image. Now, one last thing that you're going to want to do when we actually go to render is we're going to want to change the sampling. However, we'll do that when we go ahead and render, because that's basically all based on how powerful your PC is. Now, next thing we'll do is just go over the basic controls. You might actually not know where the controls are. They're pretty much all right up here. Now, this is actually the toggle camera view. Now, if you have a camera selected, which we don't have a camera up right now, once we pose the model, I'll show you guys how to actually add a camera. But that's how you would do that, is to go into your camera view. Now, what this is right here is basically just the drag tool. So if you go like this or up and down, literally just left click on your mouse and you can go all over the place. This is the zoom tool, so you can zoom in and out with that, or you can just simply use your scroll wheel on your mouse. I just like to do that better instead of going up here. And then right here, this is how you move 360 degrees pretty much. So up, down, left, right, all over the place, you can do that. Another easier way to do it though is just hold down your scroll wheel on your mouse, and then you can do the same thing. So you don't have to go up here every time. And then the rest of the stuff is basically just like SFM. So this is your armature right here, and this is actually the mesh, which the person who made this model just renamed it to bullseye and then armature. Armature is the bones. And if they didn't rename the file, then it would just be something.ao, which is the bones as well. So if you guys want to actually pose your model, make sure that you guys have your AO or the armature selected, and then go over here where it says object mode, and then click on pose mode. And then from there you can click on whatever bone you want. And then it's basically the same thing as SFM at this point. Just go to the move tool, and then you can do that just like SFM, or you can go to the rotate tool and you can do that as well on any bone. And then just like SFM, if you guys want to go back on something, just click Ctrl-Z on your keyboard. Now, if you guys want to move your whole entire model, go back to object mode. And then once again, make sure that you have your armature or your bones selected. And then go to your move tool. And then you can actually just move it, or you can rotate it whatever which way you want. Just some quick tips right there, and then that's pretty much all you have to do before you actually go ahead and pose your model. So I might just go ahead and do a simple pose with like the deagle or something like that. And let me find the deagle real quick. Wrong one. There you go. And then just click on object once again, highlight these two, and just make sure you click on a pen from library. And there you go, there is your deagle. And most of the time it should be scaled up regularly, so this should be the normal size that she would hold it in her hand. It's not though. So basically, if you guys want to scale something down or scale something up, it's a lot easier than Blender. Just click S on your keyboard, and then you can drag in or out, blah blah blah. So we're gonna scale that up to probably about where her hand is. Only thing is that you can't do it in pose mode though, so make sure that if you guys are in pose mode, you go to object mode, and then you can actually click on it and scale it. You can't do it in pose mode. So I'm gonna go ahead and pose the model real quick, and I'm gonna cut to when I finish that, and then we'll go over lighting and all that stuff and a lot more of the detailed features.
This blue eye perceives all things conjoined. The past, the future, and the present. Everything flows, and all is connected. This eye is not merely seeing reality, it is touching the truth.
Alright, now that we're done with a little bit of a simple pose, I'm going to show you guys how to actually put your camera in, and then I'll just do some finishing touches on the pose, because there is some things that I want to correct real quick. So basically, it's very simple to add your camera actually. All you have to do is go to, or first of all, make sure you're on object mode. You can't be on pose mode. And then you're going to have to click on add, and then just simply click on camera. Now, there are some things that might happen if your models are actually scaled very, very big. Your camera might not actually appear. In that case, like we did with the hand cannon, just simply click on S, and then you're going to have to scale it all the way up. But obviously, it's going to be a lot more because some models are absolutely huge, and then other things like your camera and lighting are going to be very small. But I will show you an easier way to do lighting instead of just going to add light and then which one you want to pick. There's a lot easier, and it's a lot better way to actually add your lighting. So is make sure you're on object mode, and then rotate it like a little bit up and to the side a little bit maybe. At least this is just what I like to do. You guys can play around with a little bit. I think that's a little bit too much maybe. Yeah. I like this position though, this angle. So we'll see how that looks. Alright, I think that's pretty good to be honest with you. Now that we have our camera position, I'm going to actually take a little bit more time on the posing now that we actually have our angle selected, and from there I'll actually go over lighting and HDRIs and stuff like that. Alright guys, so I did a little bit of touching up on our render. Now I'm actually going to show you guys how to do lighting. Now, if you guys have been doing thumbnails, or if you guys have, watched people making thumbnails, or at least, alright guys, so I did a little bit of finishing touches on our posing. Now we're actually going to dive into lighting. Now, there's a few ways you can actually do your lighting. The first one being HDRIs, which a lot of people actually meme HDRIs because it's a very, very simple way to do your lighting. I'm not too sure if you guys have heard of them or not. However, I will leave the link to the HDRI that I mainly use down in the description. It links to HDRI Haven, which they have tons of HDRIs on there, but the one that I use personally, I will link down below. Essentially what HDRIs do is they basically cast shadows and they make lighting a lot easier. So if you don't see a spot where you maybe want it to be lighted, or you maybe want a shadow to be there necessarily, the HDRIs do that for you. So first things first is we're gonna actually import our HDRI, which if you guys have that downloaded by now, essentially it should be like this right here, this bottom part, and all you're gonna have to do is just drag up on it to make sure that you have a little bit more space to work with. Now you're gonna want to click on this clock right here, and then it brings up all this stuff. Just click on the shader editor right here. Once you do that, it should say object on the next tab right here, and then just click on world, and then you can zoom in on this stuff to make it a little bit easier. All you have to do from here is just click on add, or you can do shift A, it does the same exact thing, and then select environment texture. Once you do that, just drag it somewhere right here, and then just make sure that you click color to color, and there you have it. Next thing up, just click on open, and then wherever you saved your HDRI, you can find it. So here it is, Delta 2. We're gonna go ahead and open that up. Now, if your HDRI doesn't appear automatically, the reason is because you're not in rendered mode. So make sure that you guys go over to rendered mode, and then as you guys can tell, your HDRI is finally there. And like I said, how it casts shadows and makes lighting a ton easier, you guys can tell, and it looks very, very clean. Delta 2 is an insanely good HDRI. I highly recommend it. Now we're not done yet. In this case, we're actually going to be doing a little bit of technique, which is called emission, where essentially you're not going to be using regular light, where if you go to add a light in an area, which is what 90% of people do with their light, which as you guys can tell is right here. Now obviously that's going to make light, however it's not going to be as sharp and it's not going to be as clean. Now I'm going to actually go ahead and save this project, and I'm going to open up a new file, and I'm going to show you something just in case your lighting does not show. So right here guys, we have another model, the red-nosed raider, and as you guys can tell, it's not like the bullseye where we opened it and it was just basically right there. We actually see the feet now. Now the reason this is because our models are actually very, very scaled. They're very, very big. So you're actually gonna have to zoom out a ton. And in this case, as you guys can tell, if we actually go to our rendered mode and then we actually try to add a light, you can't see the light. The reason why that is because your model is too big. Now what you can do is at the start, you can either scale your model down, or you can just scale the light up like this basically, where you're just gonna have to click S and then basically just drag it up until. Now the thing is with this either is that as you guys can tell, fully flip it and we actually put it up, there is no light. Now the reason why that is because once again your models are so big, so you would have to go to object data tab, and you would actually have to turn your power to like, I don't know, like 50,000 or something like that. It's something like huge. As you guys can tell, your light is finally there now, like 20,000 or something like that. But obviously that is a big pain. So if you guys do not want to scale your models down and you just want to keep it like that, there's a lot simpler way to do it. So now we're back on our other project in the rendered mode, and we're actually going to be doing a technique like I mentioned a little bit earlier called emission. Now essentially what that is you're actually going to want to make sure that you're in object mode, go to add, mesh, and then click on plane. Now your plane should be pretty big, however if you drag it out, and then you can actually size it down, which is what I'm going to do. And this is actually how to shrink things, this tool right here, which is basically just the scale tool, but you can actually like shrink stuff now. So size it up to the way you want, but basically the thinner it is the more sharper the light is going to be, which will actually give you guys that really nice sharp light on the outer edges of your model. Now the only problem right now is that our plane is actually not giving off any lights. So what you're going to want to do is go back to the shader editor, make sure that you have your plane selected, go to object, make sure that you guys click on new right here, and then you can actually see this. What you're going to want to do is you're going to want to actually delete this whole entire principle right here, so it's just the material output. Once again, like how we entered the HDRI, you can click on add or just go to shift A and then search up emission. And then this is basically how we're gonna get our light from the plane, and then just connect emission to surface, and then we could turn up our strength. I'm gonna turn that up about to like, I don't know, maybe 6 or something like that. And then if we go back into our camera, it's finally giving off that nice like outer kind of glow right here. So that's, in my opinion, the best way to do lighting instead of just using the regular area light. Now we're actually going to go ahead and copy this one and actually just drag it over to the other side. And then once again, we have that nice crisp outer glow. Now, if your light is actually brighter in one place than it is in another place, essentially that's because you actually have to go to the material tab right here. And then at the material tab, if you go on your planes, you'll see this little box right here, and just click on this add a new material. Just click on both of those, or how many ever planes you have, and then essentially your lighting will be balanced across all of them, so it's a separate light. One quick tip though is that your guys' models, when you actually render them out, it might be a little bit noisy. Now if you don't know what noise is, it kind of looks like this, what you're seeing right now in the rendered mode, where essentially there's like little dots, and they might be colored, they might just be white and black, but that's basically noise. And to essentially get that from coming out of your full render, you're actually going to want to download a plugin which is called denoise. I'll leave that down in the description as well. And then all you have to do from there, once you have it installed, is you should be able to just go to edit and then preferences, and then once this loads, you should just be able to search up denoise, and then you guys can see it right here. Once you check mark it and then save preferences, if you go over to the view layer tab, then you guys can see that you have denoising and then denoise AL denoiser. And then once you actually click on both of these, go down on this drop down menu and then click use HDR training. I would 100% recommend doing it if you guys want your images to come out in obviously full quality. Also, another thing that I forgot to mention is that once you're done with your rim lights, go over to the object tab. Once you've done that, go over to cycle settings, the drop down menu, and then uncheck camera. And now essentially what Blender thinks is that those lights that you just made, those are actually camera lights now. One last thing that has to do with lighting, go back over here to the render tab, go to light paths, and then make sure that you change your direct light to 6, and then you also change your indirect light to 6 as well. And there you go. Now your lighting is perfectly balanced across all sides. So at this point, guys, we're pretty much ready to render out our model. Now, like I said in the beginning of the video, you're actually going to have to go back to your sampling tab later, and you're actually going to want to change the render number to about 600 if you have an average PC. That's what I started off with, but I realized that I could do it way higher because I have a, not to brag, but I have a fairly decent PC. I have a 2080, and since I am using my GPU to render out the image, I can do it way higher. So I usually do it around like 1300. I've stuck with 1260 for a long time, so that's just what I do from now on and probably forever. And then yeah, basically just to render out your image, just go to render and then image, and then depending on how fast your PC is, it might take 5, 10, 15, 20 minutes. It really just all depends. So we're just going to go ahead and wait this out, and I'll cut it when it's done, and we'll go ahead into Photoshop and show you some extra tips that I have. Alright, so here's a previous thumbnail that I worked on, obviously without the CC, but basically this is just what I always go to. I have screenshots in here. Basically, if you guys want to get screenshots, you can either take them out from replay mode, obviously, but basically where I got my screenshots from is I actually bought Evade Blizzards, and also on top of that, I also bought Evade Laerdo's, and I think Cole's, I think that's how you pronounce his name. I bought their pack as well. Basically, they give you like, obviously, I'm pretty sure in Blizzards he has like 100 something, like 150, 160 renders, as well as in Laerdo's he also has like 150 in there as well. So tons of screenshots to work with. I'm gonna just basically go ahead and pick out a background real quick. All right, I have my background selected. I'm actually just gonna go ahead and create a whole new document now. I'm gonna go ahead and drag this stuff over. If you guys are worrying about color correction, I'm very sorry guys, but I'm not giving out my color correction. It's the last thing that I want to give out. The thing that I personally really like about my thumbnails is my color correction, so I'm not going to be giving it out. There are a lot of color corrections that people have sold before, like once again Laerdo, he has a color correction pack that you can actually just go download from free on his YouTube. That's over there. What I'm going to do firstly is actually create the blur in the background. So for blur, I like to add a few. I usually like to go to Gaussian blur and put it at about like, I don't know, 1.2. It's kind of weird, but I like to put it at that usually. I like to put some box blur on there as well. You don't really want to move the box blur up a whole ton. Like, usually put it on like 2 or 3 possibly. Just depends on your render. So I'm gonna leave that at 2. I'm gonna also put on a little bit of radio blur, as well as you don't want to put a lot on this as well, like maybe 1 or something like that. And yeah, so just to get that a little bit of motion blur on there. It's not motion blur exactly like this, but it kind of gives you that effective motion blur. So next step that I always do is I'm gonna go ahead and rasterize the layer real quick. I actually like to create a whole new layer, and then I actually like to clip it to that. Use the brush tool to kind of create a rim light that Blender couldn't. And then you go ahead and put this on overlay. And then basically you can just go ahead and, you know, create a little bit of light. So if that emission technique did not get exactly the lighting that you want, you can do it this way. And I actually don't need lighting. I need right there. Maybe some on the glove, probably. Maybe on the gun a little bit. On the tip of the gun for sure, because that's exactly where the light's coming from. Definitely some up here. Now, if we go ahead and uncheck that, as you guys can tell, we added some light in spots where Blender couldn't. So that's another thing that I like to do. Now, every piece is going to be different when it comes to Photoshop. So you might add, you know, more light in some other pieces. It's not going to be the same exact thing. But all right, guys. So the rest of this, I'm actually just going to go ahead and do a little bit of more work that I just usually do on my thumbnails anyways. So I'll see you guys after this little time lapse is over. I fall in love too terribly hard. Alright, yeah guys, so that's basically about it, man. That is definitely what I would call a completed thumbnail. Essentially what I did is I went ahead, I added a little bit of a sun effect. I did some stuff on her eyes where essentially you actually make the pupils, because this is just a reflection. So in most cases you actually have to add the pupils yourself. So that's what I did as well. I also added a little bit of a blending with the sky and the trees as well, which is another thing you guys can do. Another thing that I did with my color correction was actually with Camera Raw filter. Now, if you guys do not know what that is, basically, it's where, hold on, we'll go to this. A very easy tab to just do color correction in Photoshop without having to add brightness and contrast or all those other adjustments. So if you guys have an updated version of Photoshop, or if you guys pay for Photoshop, you should have this already right here. It's basically just go to filter and click on Camera Raw, and then you can basically just customize any numbers you want with the exposure, temperature, highlights, shadows, whatever. But yeah, man, that's basically what I do. I hope this tutorial helped you guys out. If it did, make sure to drop a like down below. Also, like I said, if you guys have any business inquiries or questions, make sure you post them down in the comments. Hopefully I'll be responding to a lot of stuff. Also, if you guys have business inquiries, feel free to contact me on Twitter. It'll be linked down below. But yeah, guys, that's pretty much it. I hope you all enjoyed, and I'll see you all in the next video. Peace.